Ask our Reeve to open us up with karakia.
Tēnā tātou. Whāia, ki te rutapunui a tāne te Waiora, tāne te pūkinga, tāne te wānanga. Tāne te whakaputa nei ki te whaiau ki te ao marama. Tū te ngana, tū ka maranga, te tuhi te rarama, tēnei au e noho matāra nei e rongo whakairia ki runga kia tīna. Haumie, huie, tākie. E rere tonu nei, ngā roimata, te tangi atu iwi, ki tō tātou nei ariki, tumu, ai tangi hutu nei te ngākau, kua pōhara katoa tātou te iwi, no reira e koro oki oki atura, moe rā. Oki mai kia tātou, te hunga ora e noho nei, o tira ara tetahi atu, tetahi ariki hou, ko te rangi māhio, arahina maira kia tātou. Tēnā tātou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Thanks, Reeve. Thanks everyone for coming along and welcome. Tonight's all about just listening and learning in an environment that hopefully we've made that clear from the kōrero that's been out there that it's a pretty relaxed environment. I think the four that we have here that we're going to hear from their perspectives on it. But before we get into, if anyone hasn't found the toilets yet, if I point those out, they're just either side of reception out there, and if there happen to be some sort of emergency, we need to exit out the clearly marked signs, and our meeting point is down outside the dock building, down towards the southwest there, if anything happens. But I know that there was some chat online about this being something that is wasting ratepayers' money. I want to be clear from the start that this was something that's put on by this passionate group here. It's not costing ratepayers anything other than those that have put their hand in their pocket just to hopefully hear their perspective and share their voice on a topic that they're really passionate about. So that came about from a chat with these two lovely ladies to the right of me here, and having heard a lot of the chat online about Māori wards and whether you're for or against it, but there's a lot of misinformation there, and I think they've just wanted to take a stand to say here's some facts, here's some truths and how they've come to be in the position they're in and talk to their why. And it's great to have a pretty mixed view on the panel up here from a Pākehā and a Māori sense. So hopefully everyone's come here with a pretty open mindset, and we're here to listen and learn, and there will obviously be some time at the end for some Q&A. But I know Tili wanted to acknowledge Ariki. I know you just spoke about that. Thanks, Reeve. But obviously we're all our thoughts are with the whānau and the people of Ngāti Tūwharetoa for the passing of Tātumu. But you want to say anything further?
Yeah, kia ora, Ben. I think it was, it was with a heavy heart that I woke up on Tuesday and I saw the news, and it was, not only, it was just a couple of days before that I had, kind of bravely rang Kim and Ben and got this going, and so it feels like a really poignant but a really tender space. So I just want to acknowledge mana whenua and that you're here, and you've just you're still in a process of
Tracy.
Yeah, aye. So yeah, I just wanted to really acknowledge that in the room. So
Thanks, Tracy. So I'm Ben Westman. If you don't know me, I'm a local business owner, real estate and property management. So these fine wahine to my right here asked me if I would sit in and moderate or keep the evening ticking along. From my perspective, I've had the privilege of having a close connection with Māori through my work and managed property portfolios. I see the way that some Māori trusts and hapu groups look after their property, and I see a little bit into their world. I'm not claiming to know it all or understand. I'm married to a Māori, and I have. I'm proud that that's part of who we are as people of Aotearoa, that we've got that strong cultural piece to us. But so I've seen the benefits of that the Māori voice working in a Pākehā world, and I think from my point of view, we're all here as kaitiakitanga. We need to be, everyone plays a part in looking after this great country we have and the resources that we get to enjoy, and it's on everyone, whatever race your background is, to look after that for future generations. We're only here for a little while, and who better to have a voice in that than mana whenua, tangata whenua have been here for long before we ever arrived. So having a te ao Māori lens on those types of things, I think plays an important part in the running of our town, our country, and whatever, and that's why I see the benefit of Māori wards playing a clear part in that. And the comments that having Māori wards will add increased rates, I find that rather strange, given that it's already here. I don't think it's added anything from a cost perspective to ratepayers, and I would challenge anyone to question how having Karen Fletcher or Danny Lachlan at the Taupō District Council table has done anything but produce good results with the Māori wards already in place. And I guess there'll be a fair bit of chat around the treaty, I imagine, as we hear from these four, but that's our founding document of New Zealand, and there's an obligation in there for us to consult and hear from tangata whenua. So I think that's the base point of why Māori wards are, this is just such an advantage of having them at the table from the outset. But I'll hand over to these guys to introduce themselves. We've got Kim Mananui, Tracy Lee Hooton, Wahine Murch and Reeve Gray here that have kindly given their time to help us understand and listen to the perspective on their thoughts on Māori wards. So I'll let them introduce themselves. If you want to start us off, Kim.
Thanks, Ian. Kia ora. I'm Kim Mananui, and I'm originally from Canada. I came here almost 30 years ago and met my husband, Steve Mananui, who is Ngāti Wharetoa, and grew up in Tōwananui, and we are raising our family here in Taupō. And we have 3 daughters who identify as Māori and who we've raised in that space. All 3 of our daughters are bilingual. They went to Kuhangareo, and they went through Rumaki at Mount View, which is a Māori immersion unit, and there's currently 60 children there and learning 100% in te reo Māori. And our eldest is now at university, and she is fair like I am, but she is strongly Wahine Māori. And one of the things that I experienced with raising my children in Taupō was that there wasn't a lot of people in leadership roles that my children could look to as representing them. It was actually really, especially as my eldest started to take on a leadership role at school, and she was a head girl at Tohara College. And I was really trying to find, particularly women, that she could relate to, that had kind of forged the path for her. And oftentimes she felt very alone in that space of standing in her te ao Māori. And I think for me, I've organically kind of engaged in the te ao Māori space. I mean, I've had the opportunity, I suppose, because of me being able to be, married into Wharetoa. So I've had the gift, I suppose, of being able to interact with Māori, and at times I have to admit, I was very vulnerable because it wasn't something that I was raised in that Indigenous space in Canada. I was absolutely from a white middle class family. My exposure to the First Nations people of Canada was a museum trip once a year, and some people talking about how Indian you were by blood quantum, and I came to New Zealand and fell in love, and was promptly taken down to the Kauriki Marae, where I had a baptism by fire, and from that day forward, I promised, to my whānau that I would lean into it, no matter how uncomfortable that sometimes was. When I was compelled for my children to be raised bilingual, I turned up at the kōhanga doorstep and they're like, who is this? And luckily I had the kōrero from my mother-in-law to back me up. And it would have been really easy for me to just walk away and go down to the early childhood or the preschool where everyone looked like me and I could talk and people could understand me and I could understand them. But I knew that for my children, I wanted that space for them. And so I leaned in. And that, I could think about it now, I'm leaning in tonight too. This is not an easy seat to sit in. I am feeling a bit vulnerable because I don't necessarily want to be labeled as an activist. That's because in our country and worldwide at the moment, activism is seen as negative, and it's got a negative connotation to it. Someone posted on one of our posts about this meeting that this was propaganda, and again, that to me was a negative. I think about propaganda as something that I think I'm not doing. I'm not doing propaganda, and if I am, I don't want to be. And I had to really kind of consider that and think, am I willing to stand up here and talk about this? But as I said, it's been a gift for me, it's been enriching, and I want to share that experience, and I want to really kind of open people's eyes to what life can be like if you embrace the culture more than just watching a kapahaka stage performance. So that's why I'm here.
Kia ora, Kim. So, ko Tracy Lee toka ingoa. My name's Tracy Lee Hooton. How to give you a picture? I wonder if I locate myself. I grew up as a pikanini, which is the pidgin English word for child, in Papua New Guinea. I grew up in Rabaul. I was the whitest person there, and at times the only white person at the market, and people would come and they would touch me because I had this white skin and run their fingers through my hair because, I was so different. And then life led me to Papakura in Auckland, where I predominantly lived, and in the 1980s had a very Western-centric Pākehā upbringing. I learnt about the Treaty of Waitangi, went to Auckland University, and then ended up down on Mount Ruapehu and fell in love with a snowmaker. And in the Whakapapa village, we lived for a while, and I was like, and then I became hapu. And I was like, where are we going to live? Because I don't think I can raise a baby in the Whakapapa village because it rains for like 280 days a year, right? And so I'm not afraid of rain, but I thought raising a baby in a really little place. So I moved to Taupō and have been here for, I don't know, how old is my son? Like 17 and a half years. And just before I was coming up to a 0 birthday, I decided that I needed to go back and I needed to gain some new knowledge and some new education. And that has led me to study. And I am doing, I'm on a process of psychology, so that's where I'm heading now. I own an early childhood centre here in Taupō, and we have out of 28 tamariki, we have 21 different ethnicities amongst our kindi whānau. It is so rich and so beautiful, and the diversity just blows me away. It just brings something to not only my world, but the world of the tamariki that I get to hang out with and the whānau that come with them, right? And so through my studies, I've done a lot of learning around Indigenous psychology, and I've done a lot of learning around te tiriti o Waitangi. And when this idea of Māori wards came up, I just thought, my lecturer actually said to me, now that you know, what are you going to do? And I thought, right. So I reached out to Wahine, actually, and I reached out to Danny, and I went, I really want to tautoko, I want to support you in Māori wards, and what do I do? How can I do this? So I bravely put myself out on social media in the craziness of the Taupō notice board. I posted it quite late at night and went to bed and forgot about it. And so here we are. 2,500 likes, 280 shares. Out of the 2,500 interactions, only 14 have been hatred emojis. Yep. So I was like, boom. I was quite happy with that. But what it has done is it's given me this really beautiful way of seeing our community and the way people think and the way that they don't think. People with heart, people who are coming to their heart still. And so that's when I reached out and I said, right, let's kanohi ki te kanohi, let's get in a room together, you know, and flesh this out and and have a conversation. So
Here we are.
yeah, thank you.
Kia ora, Tracy Lee, o tira, tēnā koutou katoa. Wow, this is so cool. It's cool. I've just, like, me and my kazi Reeve just come off the back of a pretty hectic week with our iwi down in Waihi. I was a little bit late because I was making my way back from Waihi, so I was just fortunate and happy to see that an event like this was being held for our wider community. I'm so glad to see so many people here. My why for being here is just because I want to have some open dialogue. I feel like whilst the campaigns and whilst the online forums are good in some faces, nothing beats a good face-to-face open conversation. And so, I just really appreciate these two wahine for putting themselves out there. I come from a generation where, we're over it. My generation, we're over it. We don't want to fight. We don't want the separatism. We don't want to divide. We literally, like me standing for the Māori ward, I was born and raised in Taupō. And I just thought, you know what, I've grown up and I've seen it, this divide, separatism, all of this ugliness growing up, and I just thought, I've had enough. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to not lead the way, but just sort of try and encourage my generation and the younger generation that we don't have to continue living in a world like this anymore. We will be the ones to bring all of our different community groups together, because that's always at the heart of what I and what my generation want to do. So for me, having a Māori ward here in Taupō is so important, because I just feel like, for me, it's a safe space. It's a safe space, but it's also just an inclusive space. I heard we're going to have some conversation about the Treaty of Waitangi later, so I'll do my best to talk about that. But I'm pretty similar to these two here. For Kim, she don't want to be labelled an activist. And then for me, I suppose, if I'm going to get out there and do this stuff, I don't want to be labelled as being a radical, because that's the reality of what happens here. And it's crazy, like it's crazy. I've got 2 babies of my own. Like I said, I come from a generation where I was we were quite lucky because we call ourselves the kohanga reo generation, because that was about 40 years ago. Those were the years when our language, Māori language, was okay to speak for us. My grandfather, his grandfather, my great-grandfather, on his side, I'm a Waititi from the East Coast, and they experienced a lot of, bad negative, bad stuff. And so I guess we're kind of lucky, our generation, we're the generation to reclaim our history, to reclaim our language, but we're also the generation who we're not trying to go off on our own pathway. We want to literally bring everyone together. There's this talk that everyone talks about having, we're all one people. I don't agree with that, because we're not one people. We have different whakapapa, we have different genealogy. It's about acknowledging that and learning to live in harmony with each other, because I suppose, you can just throw something over us, group us and say we're all one people, but at the end of the day we're not. But that's all right. That's okay. We just need to, I suppose, figure out a way forward together, because we're better off together. So I'm just preaching and going off on my own little tangent. But that's why I'm here tonight, and I'm just really, really looking forward to having open conversation. I also hope that maybe we can have open conversation with everyone here in the room tonight as well, not just so you fellas sitting here listening to us blabber all night. I want to be able to, grab your fellas, hear from everybody, because that's what it's all about for me anyway. So thank you everybody for coming.
Kia ora everyone. I'm Reeve Gray. I was born and raised here in Taupō. I went to Tauhara College. I'm also from Ngāti Tūwharetoa. My dad is a carpet layer. He's from Putaruru, well that's where he grew up, and then he moved here. And he met my mum here, who's here tonight. She's a teacher. Well, was a teacher and has sort of stayed in education since, but I'm trying to piece together how I got here. I was born here, but then I left. Okay, so I was born here, raised here, did my schooling here, got to have the whole kind of community Taupō experience, being raised close to my iwi and things like that. But I remember the first time that I ever engaged with council or things like this kind of political systems was they were doing submissions on the long-term plan in like 2011, and one of our teachers was like, okay, you're a little bit clever, you're also kind of smart, like come to this room, we're going to put these submissions together, kind of teach you about political engagement and stuff like that. She didn't ask if we had any ideas or anything yet, but so I went to this room and kind of started talking, and I was really fortunate at the time because I went in with one of my die-hard bros, like we were in it together, because she said come, and then I was looking for my friends, like none of my friends are coming, and I was like, brother, come, you got to keep me company in here. And me and him, and it was much the same for many of my friends growing up in college. You don't really understand when you're like 14 and 15, kind of hard issues to do with family violence and drug addiction and all of those things, but we intensely understood that we went home to different houses and we had different realities sitting behind all of the fun school play touch at lunch kind of stuff. And it was an interesting space because we managed to kind of break that open and talk about why things are like that, why he has a different experience to me, and why the majority of my Māori friends had a similar experience to him, which was one of every day seems to be a battle, every day seems to be about being hungry, every day seems to be about just making it to class or getting growled too many times by teachers and just hanging on by a thread in school. I was really lucky that I had a lot of love in my household and was quite protected and sheltered from a lot of those things, but we had mamae in our family too, amongst our cousins and my uncles. I saw a lot of the similar things, like, oh hey, they act like my friend Ben, or they act like my friend whatever it was. But you still don't understand much. Our council submission ended up being about, we wanted to send whānau-friendly home officers into houses to help ameliorate some of these things that we knew were happening in particularly these kind of Māori boys' houses, so that they could have a better time of it, have a fair shake of the stick at school and things. It was cool, it was a cool experience, good, like learned lots about submissions and stuff, and then the council sort of said, great idea boys, but unfortunately that sounds like a government thing, and we were like, okay, but the teacher kind of gave us the tick and was like, okay, you're good to go. That kind of sat there and hung with me for a long time, and I think over what ended up happening was I kind of internalized that as my purpose or life's mission, was to kind of square things for a lot of the people who looked like me and didn't have the same sort of opportunities as me, because I had this sense that it wasn't their fault. But then again, a lot of what we were hearing at that time was that we're just like that, you know, we're just, our dreams were that we were going to be on the benefit, or we made jokes about family violence and things like that, as if it was something to do with just being who we were. Just being Māori boys at school. You get in trouble, you wag, and you smoke weed. Those are the tenets of being a Māori boy at high school. And then I went to university.
Of Oxford.
Just saying.
So I sought missions far and wide, you know, I gave it the benefit of the doubt. Hey, maybe that's the case, but I'm going to go learn and see what's really going on here. So I took education to the end of its earth and went to Auckland University and saw, if I thought things were bad here in Taupō, I arrived in Auckland and was like, wow, we don't even know, you know, we don't even know what's up. These delineations between us high school boys are literally neighbourhoods drawn in the sand. Some are poorer than others, and that's just how it is. That's just how life is. And it's in scale. Well, I mean, we've all been up to Tamaki, we've all been up to Auckland, and we've all been horrified the first time we walked down Queen Street, and we're like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? Because in Taupō, it's not as hectic. It's not like that. But what I learned at university was it was all coming together. These things are coming together. It's like, it can't be just because I'm brown that things are like this, right? It can't be just because I'm Māori that we're like this. And so I learned about history, and I learned about colonisation, and I remembered stories that kind of flooded in the background from my koro, who talked about, Wahine didn't want to say it, but getting his ass whooped for just speaking his language, being told that he wasn't enough, being told that you have to do this way of life now and leave all those other things behind. I remembered those stories, and I kind of pieced it together and came to the very, you know, almost common sense understanding with all my studies and with my Oxford graduation, all that kind of stuff, that it's not our fault. It's nothing to do with who we are. It's nothing to do with being inherently Māori that the things are the way they are. It's got everything to do with history, and it's got everything to do with a failed promise called Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And we're going to talk about it tonight, but again, we could get into the intellectual debate and the legal debate about the wordings and the understandings of rangatira at the time, but hopefully when I tell you the story, you can understand that there's a very 14-year-old mind there to be like, that can't be a fair deal, right? That can't be what people thought was the deal when they signed on to the agreements like that this would be the reality for a huge swath of people living here in this country, let alone people who have lived in this country for generations and hundreds of generations, who have walked these lands, you know, climbed these maunga, swum these waters. No, it's not fair. So that's why I'm here tonight, because everything we can do to make the picture fair again is a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do for those boys that I'm talking about, the high school kid, the people who aren't getting a fair shake, because the truth is, and it's not just Māori, but there is a concentration for Māori, poverty is rife for people. people are out there having a hard deal every single day that is still happening for children out there, that is still happening for families and whānau out there. And you try and connect the dots to lots of things, but we need to do so much more outside of Māori wards. Māori wards is just one, small part of that solution where we can allow a more fairer shake of the stick, like I'm saying, right across that spectrum. So that's why I'm here. I got back to Taupō and this was all kind of blowing up, and I just wanted to join the cousins and sort of say something about it. And we've got a page called E2 Taupō. It's been making posts, and like Wahine said too, I don't to come back to the divisiveness, especially I studied overseas, and I knew it's kind of like world's blown up, and I knew what divisive politics is. I came to understand these are very real big things going on over here. And it makes sense. People are at each other's necks, literally. There is war everywhere in lots of places. So I came to understand that and came back here and felt seeds of division and hate. And I was like, hold up. We're here in Taupō, We have beautiful stories of our people working together with settlers, with British settlers, that aren't being talked about in this very conversation. We have stories about poverty and whānau struggling that aren't necessarily being brought into this picture. So for me it's about adding that context and being able to have a talk about this inside that story, as opposed to the divisiveness that I think, to be honest, has sort of just been taken from central mainstream actors and kind of implemented here, which I don't like to see in our community. So
Kia ora, Reeve. Thanks, mate. I think everyone agrees that you've come from 4 very different paths to get to where you are, but you've come with the same common passion to just have a voice for this kaupapa. So it's a good segue that Reeves used there, because tonight and how to frame up what sort of topics or we were going to cover came from one of the posts Tili made that thankfully only had a small amount of vitriol in it, but there was some common themes that came out of that and the questions that people had. And the first one was a misunderstanding of te tiriti. So that's, I think, a good place to start to set the basis for the kōrero around this. I guess the misunderstanding between the treaty of being the English text of it and te tiriti being the Māori version and the interpretations or misinterpretations of what the intentions of that document were. And because I think they're central to understanding our history and where we've come to where we are. So I don't know who wants to launch into that little topic.
I mean, I've studied this as you live it, and you live it and study it, right? So so from my perspective, like I talked about, I was raised and we learnt about the treaty, and no one ever talked to me about te tiriti and the difference in language. And particularly, there are 4 articles in te tiriti, and there's 4 articles in the treaty, Article 1, and I think that this is where I think we've got some real rub, and that is the difference between kawanatanga and sovereignty. And so in the Māori version, or in te tiriti, kawanatanga is used, and Māori understood what a kawana was, what kawana, because it was in the Bible, right? And so this is how Māori came to understand. And so they signed an understanding that they were agreeing that the Crown was going to govern, was not going to be the sovereign. So the difference between a sovereign and a governor are quite distinct. And so when I look at that lens of our local council and why, to be a good, fair, just society, that Māori get to have a voice and bring mātauranga, and so knowledge and wisdom from the Māori world, which is different to the Pākehā world. And different doesn't mean deviant, and different doesn't mean that it's lesser than. Different is just different. And so I was like, I want a Māori view on these issues in governance and and sovereignty doesn't belong in that space. I mean, that's a very rudimentary, kind of off the cuff. Does that, am I making sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think as well, like, I think swinging back to what Reeve was saying, when you think about the deal and it not being a fair deal, I mean, that just sort of, it's a rabbit hole that I encourage everybody to go down in their own time, because you're not going to get a comprehensive understanding of the Treaty of Waitangi and Te Tiriti o Waitangi in a couple of hour session, right? I spent some time down in Otaki when I was studying as well, studying Māori laws and philosophy, and I had a pretty cool lecturer. His name was Moana Jackson, and one of my papers was on Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Waitangi, Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi, and he kind of explained it in like a really cool way, like that makes you kind of think, and then kind of hits the brink of you understanding. And he used to draw this line across our whiteboard, and it was like with a red marker. He used to draw a long line across the whiteboard, and he, at that one end of the line, he would put the year 1840, and that's how he introduced us to Te Tiriti o Waitangi. But actually, he didn't start at 1840. He took us back from 1840. He said, he used to teach in a way that sort of displayed or showed that actually Māori history and partnership with kawana didn't start at 1840. We had this whole timeline of events, of history, of kōrero that occurred before the signing of this document. And he used to say to us, do you really think that all of the chiefs in New Tireni, that's what they used to call New Zealand back then, woke up one morning and decided to sign the mana of all of their lands, all of their resources, the mana of their people over to a fat white lady in England? That's how he used to explain it. And it made you, realise, it sparked that thought that actually, well, maybe, no, actually, that doesn't sound like that's what had happened. But what that did was just sort of encouraged you to go and go down a rabbit hole and just have a bit of a look into the events and how that all played out, and then maybe you could try to understand what the purpose of that partnership or that agreement was for. So
I think it's a good thing always to talk about context around the signing, around how things kind of set the lay of the land at the time of the signing. And to Wahine's point, there's when British and European settlers started to arrive, there was actually kind of very good relations between Māori and the Crown. Business and trading and learning each other's languages and sharing religion and that kind of thing. And I understand it to be too that the British, because they had quite a bit of experience colonising the world by then, they wanted to, some of the colonialists at the time, wanted to do a better, more fair job. They didn't want to just kind of, India it or Australia it or those things. They had learned that was kind of terrifying, horrible, and even they could acknowledge the kind of the sins that took place in those places. So the idea for a treaty came up, or the idea that there could be a mutual understanding about how we're going to share or be together in this place that we're coming to. And Māori were very open to that. The treaty emerged out of a lot of conversations, and another thing that doesn't really get taught in school though is that 5 years before the treaty there was this thing called the Declaration of Independence, which to me is the kind of line in the sand around what Māori wanted at that time. What they wanted to happen was like, great, come through, trade, we like it, we like the language, we like these things. But remember, we're here, and we're the leaders of our people. That's like it's an uncompromisable, that's the line right there. As the crowd's like, yes, all good, no worries about that. And 5 years beforehand, there's a document out there that talks about the mana being retained. There's no translation issue here. It's like, these guys are the leaders, they're the sovereign or whatever.
And King George even went, yeah.
Yeah, it was like,
He
sweet,
acknowledged
that
it.
looks great, we can do it better here, we can do a better job. But then the kind of like colonial bones in the British got a bit more itchy. And we're like, oh, but I'd still like it if we could do a bit more and just have a bit more here, a bit more land there. So they decided to complicate the document because it was getting a bit more sticky. There were land trades and things going down that were a bit dodgy, and Māori also were starting to be a bit unhappy with the way things were going.
Thanks, Sandra.
Particularly up north, there was a lot of violence that was starting to take place between the settlers and the Māori. So they're like, whose jurisdiction is this? Like, what are we going to do about this? And so they need to complicate the document a bit. But the key piece out there is 5 years later, and this is the bit around the debate is that Māori signed away their sovereignty, or signed away that thing that they committed to 5 years beforehand. Across New Zealand, they all said, yeah, you know what, take it, have the sovereignty. Can you really believe that that would be the case? Māori at the time outnumbered settlers 20-1 at that time. So when it came to any people playing war games in their head, understood that like, well, we can't do it like that because we're going to lose, right? So this idea that Māori 5 years later signed away their sovereignty and said, here, look, have it, the Queen can come and run the ship here, it's all good. I feel like as soon as you start to recognise that context, and afterwards, the very many challenges and colonial perspectives and archives that say, hey, people on the day went away from that hui with the signing. This is colonial, this isn't Māori, and said, I don't think they got it. I don't think they really understood what we thought they were signing on to, because the British perspective was, yes, they're just about to sign away the sovereignty. But they're all acknowledging too, I don't know if that went down very well. It's like when you sign a contract or a deal and nah, there's a different understanding here. We have to hash that out. They knew, Māori had some understanding, lots of Māori decided, no, I don't think this is a go, we're not going to sign it, including here in Tūwharetoa. The iwi leaders of Tūwharetoa determined that, no, this ain't good. I think this is a grab. They had understood that kind of like insidious mission as part of the British kind of colonisation of New Zealand. And so understanding that those events, and I think it dispels completely this idea that Māori by choice decided that they were going to sign away their rangatiratanga or their sovereignty to a foreign power, and they proved they didn't want to do that other, because straight out again, we can follow the history trail. There were wars. They put their life on the line for this thing that they knew they were sticking up for. I don't know if they would have done that if they knew they'd signed it away. Or any normal, that's where you got to put yourself in a kind of real common sense position in history and understand those facts, and you'll see that doesn't quite square up. And we had by no means, like Moana Jackson has tried to say this in a million and trillion ways. That's why we can go down all of these kinds of intellectual and understanding context and history. But at the end of the day, you can kind of recognise there's an unfairness or unsquareness about it. And it's to say too that when that unfairness was recognised, there was actually a lot of efforts on the part of the Crown to try and do things. They instigated special committees and boards akin to Māori wards because they could see there needed to be an input or a voice into their colonial system that was taking over. So it's not this new special right thing that's being afforded to Māori out of the blue, and it just it takes power. It's about process of trying to make things fair over time, because there's something that wasn't square and we need to square it up, because like I said, at the end of the day it's led to whānau Māori being poor and being displaced from their whenua or their land. So just context around Te Tiriti o Waitangi. There's the text, but more importantly just understanding everything that was going on at the time. Yeah.
And there's heaps of places that you can go to learn and gain access to this. I think in the last 5 years in particular, you know, social media, you know, Instagram, Facebook, you know, like there's some really accessible, real, easy to understand to come to that. It doesn't need to be highly intellectual. Yeah.
Can I say something? Just, I've seen some of the comments around this on Facebook around, well, even it did get signed, but it's at a central government level. Like they signed it, you know, central government and Crown. So what's it got to do with local? Is anyone able to talk to that side of things?
I think I could probably talk about, first of all, local government is an institution of the Crown. And so everything flows from the Crown into all the institutions of the Crown. So it is part of it. I think for me, it's something that needs to be lived out every day and every moment. I don't think it's something that you can box up and put into someone's box of responsibility. I think it is something that we're all responsible for. And I think too, like I've heard this said a few times, is that when it comes to local government, and you know, as I'm kind of learning more about local government, that local government's actually where the rubber hits the road. Like I've heard that quite a few times, and I'm not sure if that's because of the roading situation or what. There's kind of like a couple of nuances there, but I think that at the end of the day, central government has this kind of, and again, I'm not as studied as these guys, so I talk in a lot more like, you know, down to earth terms. So, but central government sets these kind of like, you know, overarching kind of big things, a policy out here, and it's hard to understand how those things are kind of interpreted and actually applied. And I think in the local government sense, that's when it actually is, when it interacts with us daily. You know, whether it's the park or the library or our roads or our water that we drink or how we look after our land, the trees that we plant through Greening Taupō, those are all local government things, and they're something that we live with on a daily basis. So to say that it's something that should be in central government just is like passing the buck, to be honest.
You can't contract out of it.
No, you can't.
It's here.
It's how we're all actually party to the tiriti. So we're either mana whenua, tangata whenua, Indigenous people, or we represent the Crown, and we have rights and responsibilities as part of the tiriti. And I think going back to this conversation is that a lot of people talk about rights, so it's like our right to this or their right to that, or let's talk about our responsibilities in that partnership and in that relationship. We all have responsibilities. It comes down to what I get out of it, and it's actually what I can give to it as much.
I love what you talked about Moana Jackson, because Moana Jackson calls Te Tiriti our first immigration document. You know, like we're here because of this relationship. Yeah. So, and Janine Hayward is an amazing. She's an academic who talks in really common sense ways about this very topic, that local government is required to give effect to Te Tiriti. Yeah. So it's not, and in fact. In my little research, because I didn't want to sit up here and this journey, I didn't just want it to come from my heart and feeling like the right thing to do. So I did a little bit of research, right? So I put a lagoima into our local council, and I wanted to know, I asked the question.
Tell us what a lagoima is.
Local government.
Local-
Yeah.
That's it, Official Information Act,
Yeah.
but at a local government level, because I've done it at central government, but at local government. And so I wanted to know how many Māori, before the Māori wards were created, I wanted to know how many Māori have actually been elected through a fair representational process, right? And my request was refused. They couldn't tell me, because local government doesn't even collect ethnicity.
Of candidates.
Of candidates.
Am I able to comment on that? I'm Sandra Greenslade. I'm
Yes.
the Turangi ward
Yeah.
councillor. We have had a Maori councillor in Turangi ever since we've been associated with the Taupō District Council. We had a very short period of about 18 months where we didn't. In our last community board, everyone on that was Maori, including one of our councillors. We had one councillor who wasn't. So from my perspective, in Turangi, we have embraced Maori. We have always had Maori coming up here to the big table. I'm not Maori, and I'm the first councillor that's been elected in that area since forever. That's not council.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, of course, is because we have Maori wards now. So we have a general ward and a Maori ward. So Te Uru Maori has stood against me. So that's just a little nuance.
Yes, and
local government.
it's a beautiful nuance to pick up, because I went a bit further and I went, how am I going to find out of like over the last 10 local government elections? So I went through all the records, and then I rang a couple of past CEOs and went, can you remember who whakapapaed Māori? Māori. Who whakapapaed Māori here? You know? And it went, well, because they don't collect ethnicity, but I know, there were 9, about 9, out of a possible 98. And do you know what? Yeah, they all came either from Mangakino or from Tarangi. There were one from Taupō, from the Taupō ward. And so there rests the idea. I think that kind of really shines a light on this question. Well, we should all just, be able to just stand up and be ourselves, and you get elected on merit. Because that doesn't...
I spoke to you before, Tracy, about my name's Julie, Temple all the way. We have 5 wards in Taupō. One's the main Taupō ward, one's the Turangi, Mangakino, East, Taupō East, and Maori. I believe they should all be represented, but I think it's the voting that's wrong for them. Because if you're in Turangi, you can only vote for your representative and the mayor. You can't vote for the councillors that are going to run your town. If you are Maori, you can only vote for your representative and the mayor. You have no right to vote for anyone else. As me, I'm in the general role. I can vote for the councillors and the mayor. I can't vote for anyone else in any of those wards, and I might know them. I know Danny Lachlan quite well, and I like Danny. I think it's the voting that's wrong. It's nothing to do with the wards. Yes, we need representation from all of these places, but it's the voting that's wrong. We need to be able to vote for them all. And all of us need to be able to vote for them all.
That was one of the themes that came through from the post as well, that it overrides the one person, one vote there. And I think you're right that the point here is that Māori wards, we're saying, are needed. It's not perfect, and I think the voting, that needs to change, but that's probably not a decision for this court at all. It's something that,
when it comes up for
change.
consultation in a few years' time.
But we need that representation from the Maori as well as from Turangi and Mangakino. We need it. Because Maori are the largest land owners here, aren't they?
Yes.
I don't know, are they?
The other theme that came through was that the idea of Māori wards is racist and discriminatory towards non-Māori. But as you say, there is other wards there already that are in place for, obviously, the rural community need representation, and this is a voice for the Māori community to have a voice at the table. And I guess going back to what you were talking about before, Reeve, that it's something that has to be done if we're to honour te tiriti and it's a small thing, but it's a really important thing if we're going to do anything to honour one step. There's a lot more work that I think needs to be done to right the wrongs that have been done. But,
and it's not, and to your point, I encourage us to have a conversation about the pitfalls of the process and the system itself like that. What I guess we're trying to say here is, I think there's been the crafting of a narrative that it has to be between having them or not having them, when we can easily engage in conversations about, let's review a process, let's understand, let's learn from the challenges that have been Māori or rural wards over time and improve upon them, because fundamentally they're still better than nothing or better than not having the thing. I really appreciate that point and raising that, that part of it. Like, we can say, yes, we want it. It doesn't mean that we can't not have a problem with it and how it currently sits. And I wish that this review or this referendum coming up was more about that than kind of locking us into these binaries of, blunt instrument, should we have it, should we not? That's the big call. And if you say we don't, we'll never have it again. We don't. It doesn't work like that. No. We all know things are more complex than that, and to hear everybody's voices would be to dive into the complexity of that.
And I think that's what, those two things are what our community has been sort of following down the path of. It's the question of should we have it or not. But like Rev was saying, to those of us who think we should have them, doesn't mean that we think there's a problem with the processes around them. Because there are, I acknowledge that, but I suppose it's just this, how do we get past it goes back to the divisive energy again, and because I'm young and I'm just going to speak how I speak, I'm going to speak my mind, I always have from the start, and it's actually like, so when you're young, right, and you're Māori, and you want to do, you're passionate about something. But then there's a whole group of mostly the same demographic of people who are saying no, no, no. How do you think that's going to make young people feel? How do you think that's going to make our young generation feel? We feel, and it's not even about I can have my opinion. It's not about that, because I know you can have your opinion. It's just, it goes back to being a good human being, a good, decent, you just go back to you go back to the basics, we can agree to disagree and that's all right, but it's just the fact that for young people, for us, there's a referendum coming up. I don't see any negatives to having a Māori ward. Why can we not have a Māori ward? Why not? Why not? How does that impact anybody else? And so when we start to dive deep into that whole thing about should we have it or should we not, that's when the divisiveness happens, especially taking to Facebook. And honestly, it should be banned. Nobody should be allowed to Facebook, none of us. Because that's when people start getting deep into their feelings, they're scrolling on Facebook and then they're like, oh, John for now, oh, wahine match, and then they start, we start ripping each other's heads off, but actually, when we're in the community together, we say hello to each other, we're kind to each other. It just goes back to being going back to the basics of being a nice human.
I just want to touch on that comment that the discrimination comment, because one of the things with my background where I'm able to I have the privilege of standing in both worlds, being where I'm very comfortable with my Māori whānau and the Māori clients I get to work with, like wahine, and at Kohanga and at the Rumaki and at the Marae. But then I also have a whole network of people that are in the Pākehā world, and I get to see both. And I do get a lot of people asking me questions, Pākehā asking me questions. I guess they feel like I'm a safe space to be able to ask those questions where they maybe feel uncomfortable or ashamed that they don't know the answers to them. that they've born and raised here and they haven't asked these questions before now. It's kind of like, you know, when you meet somebody and you've met them like a few times and you don't remember their name, and then it gets to a certain point where you just can't ask them. Like, you know, after a few meetings you can be, oh, I can't remember your name. But like after maybe like 5 or 6 or 8 and you're like, oh, and you get awkward about it and you get ashamed about it because you didn't ask the question at the time and you didn't admit that and then you can't ask.
That's why I called you mate for years.
Oh, is that why? Because, and so I think that sometimes is the case when it comes to some of these questions about Te Ao Māori. When you are born in the Pākehā system and you've never asked the questions. And so instead of actually just getting brave and asking them, you just don't. You just don't, and you just keep ignoring it, and it turns into fear, and it turns into hatred, and all those things. Anyways, I have lots of people asking me questions, and one of the questions that people talk to me about is that, isn't it discrimination when you are using a race-based principle? And I'm like, it's not, because you are not excluding anyone. You're not excluding anyone. No one has an unfavourable outcome from having a Māori ward. No one. It doesn't harm anyone. It doesn't take anything away from anyone. If anything, it gives us these gifts. And that is why it's not discriminatory. And I think that, you know, if you haven't asked the questions before, you haven't thought about it or you haven't reflected on it, I think it's time for us to do that and to feel uncomfortable and just ask. And yeah, that's how I feel about that question. I don't know if anyone else has any comments, but
That's a good way to start to wrap it up, I think. Thanks, Kim. There was one question that got sent through to the team before tonight that they wanted us to touch on, and it says, why isn't Māori voices not heard if they are on council? Can't they represent on council board as well, just like everyone else putting themselves forward? Why does it need to be separated? I mean, I suppose that's easy answer to that is they can. Obviously there's 2 standing, Steve Mananui, Bill Clark, both Māori that are standing on the general ward, but I don't know if anyone has anything further to add to answering that query.
Well, I kind of thought about that too, you know, because I thought about changing my position and from the general ward onto the Māori ward, you know, so that I could vote for tangata whenua, because I really valued that lens over all issues, yeah, and I chose not to, and I've stayed in the general ward, and I think tangata whenua, mana whenua need to be at the table representing mana whenua. And when Māori stand in the general ward, they represent everybody. And so it's about Māori candidates having a real, they stand in their community and go, I will carry your voice uniquely as Māori.
Tracy, I've got to interrupt you there.
Yeah.
When Māori candidates are in the ward, they do represent everybody.
Yes.
We are all there to represent everybody. And as a councillor from a very remote part of outer Mongolia, I struggle with that because I find that other councillors do not represent Turangi, and I'm sure our Maori councillors have found that too, that other councillors do not represent Māori. So we are actually, by law, supposed to represent everybody on all issues.
Yes, and I absolutely understand that. And the thing is, how do I, say if I was standing and I say, you know, and pledge that I will represent everybody, and I don't speak te reo Māori. So how do I bring my taranga to the table?
I think I've had another question of someone's asked me, they felt that perhaps Māori wards put this extra burden on the Māori ward councillors to know everything about the Māori issues and to be the ones to decide on the Māori issues, and that's the burden that they, and it was actually out of feeling of concern. It wasn't against Māori wards per se, but they were like, why should they have to carry that burden? And I explained it to him that actually it is about a Māori lens on all issues. Even ones that are looking like they're just neutral about whether we have a new park or not. It's about, is that park going to be accessible by Māori children? And the same thing with Turangi, is that your voice is a Turangi lens on all of the issues. It's not about the rest of the council going, oh, that's a Māori issue, we'll let the Māori ward deal with it. It's about having a viewpoint from Māori. I think also, to answer this question here, I think we need to delve a little bit into equity versus equality and accessibility. I explained to someone the other day as well, I said, imagine if you've grown up in a Pākehā world and you've gone to Pākehā boarding school and you've done all these things and you're in this, in a counsellor's situation, it's a comfortable space for you. I can sit in a boardroom and I can hold my own in a boardroom. The counsellors, Taupō ward counsellors stand in front of, at the Cozy Club and get all these questions and stuff, and they're comfortable in that space because that's their world. That's a colonial construct of how we should operate. If I asked you to go to the marae and participate in a debate on the marae, there would be a lot of concern. How am I going to do that? What do I do? I need someone to help me, tell me what a protocol I have to do. Because I know, because I've been in that seat, hanging on to my husband, going, I don't know what to do. Please tell me. And so, all of a sudden you'd be like, I'm just not going to go because that is too uncomfortable for me. So you can imagine, as a Māori person, putting their name forward on a council that has been traditionally been white and male, and putting their name forward and saying, yeah, I'll put myself out there. I don't. It's so inaccessible to them that they're like, why would I put myself and expose myself into that? The Māori wards, like you said, it's a safe spot. Wahine, you're a strong woman, so you may have put your name forward if there was no Māori ward. But this is the avenue for us to have that. And equity versus equality is a massive thing, and someone said it in one of the debates that it's just semantics. It is absolutely not semantics. Equality is giving everyone the same opportunity. Equity is about fairness and understanding the position that they come from and what background, what influence they've had, and giving them the opportunity for an equitable outcome. And they're very, very different. And we can understand it when we talk about women's pay equity, but as soon as we put a Māori spin on it, no, they're getting too much. And anyways, so that's my answer to that question.
Right? I know you're trying to wrap up, but if I can just share maybe kind of an insight on that, on those differing cultural systems. People might have watched things like the Māori King's coronation or watch TV when Waitangi's happening and things like that. And Pākehā, Christopher Luxon goes up to those things, or goes to those things, and so have previous prime ministers and all of that. Even though for however many years, 800 years, Māori have spoken their own language in their own domains in those places, you see when someone like him comes, we change the tikanga. We allow a spot for an English person to get up and speak English. Because we understand we can't expect this person to get up here and fire off a whai kōrero as if they've learnt that their entire lives. Because we understand there's a difference in worldview, and the need to work together and understand each other's perspectives requires us, it's on us, our responsibility in that specific dynamic is to make some room. Hey, we've been practicing this for 800 years, but come on, look at the poor guy. What's he going to do? So we allow that to happen. I'm not sure why that understanding cannot be flipped in the reverse. where you can't understand that we need to make some room. I think of it like you triage in hospitals, like you make room because it makes sense. I've talked about some of the colonial history. Does it not make sense to have this allowance? We've talked about that the allowance doesn't necessarily negatively impact on anybody, right? The rates corridor has been shut down, so we're not talking about resources being scrapped for and all of that. It's making room in a place, in a dynamic that requires us to make room so that we can have some good footing participation, just like the Prime Minister gets when he goes to wherever he wants to go. Yeah? It's the same thing in reverse. And you'd think, if anything, given the colonial history, it's on the Crown to have those responsibilities first and foremost. But you go to, if any of you went to the tangi over the weekend, you'd see making the room, making the space, making allowance for not really understanding what's going on. Because we're from different worlds, we have different cultures, so we should. Especially for our tangata whenua, who have had those rules here for 800 years, 800 plus years. So that's just something on that kind of understanding that cultural shift, the disadvantage that you're at when you're thrown into those spaces. Yeah.
You shouldn't be scared of it.
Does anyone else have any questions for the team?
I want to ask a question.
Great.
I believe that Māori should have been asked about that referendum, nobody else. How do you feel about that?
About this, the Māori Wards referendum? Yeah.
I don't believe it was a question that should have been asked of everybody, because it's your wards, it's your representation, and I would have liked just Māori to have been asked that question.
Yeah, I think just from my perspective, what I would like is that when questions like that are asked of the community, we all have the same understanding, especially behind Māori kaupapa. We have the understanding. We might not agree to it, but we have the context, we have the history, we have the understanding to be open-minded enough to hold that and to keep that at the forefront of our minds when we vote or when we do anything. I mean, Māori, I know you've seen a couple of individual Māori on the Hobson's Pledge saying they don't agree to Māori Wards. Well, you know what? Those couple of individuals don't speak for Māori. Māori are speaking for themselves, and we have made that very clear here in Tūwharetoa, here in Taupō. We support our Māori Wards. I said it at one of the candidate events. We need our community to back us and get on board with us. We support it. We support them. We support them. I support them. So it's actually an entire shift of a narrative, of a mindset that needs to happen, so that when referendums like these or when kaupapa like these come up, we're looking at it from the lens of having context behind the decision we're about to make. We could say all Māori vote on this, but then, we're trying to move forward. Yeah. We're trying to do things together. That's my whakaaro. I believe that we need to, and we can. I believe that that we can get there. We just need to have understanding, compassion, empathy.
You were saying there should be much more context, there should be much more much more leading up to it.
Definitely.
Open
dialogue like this. Much of an open dialogue like this.
Because I think it allows us to actually go, those Māori can sort themselves out. And that's often what I hear is that, everything was settled, they can just look after themselves now. And that kind of thing is another way that I know that's not where the question's coming from for you, but that kind of thing would allow a whole segment of the community to say they got to sort their own stuff out. And so it means that you don't have to have these conversations. You don't have to be educated because you're just leaving it to this kind of, and you're not embracing collaboratively. I think that in this current climate, it is concerning, because I think that there could be a majority of people that don't agree with the panel up here, and that we could be not having Māori wards. But that doesn't mean the conversation is over. That doesn't mean that we stop doing what we're doing. Like, this is not just, we talked a lot about this, and when we've talked about it, this isn't, this is the kind of the opportunity for us to actually start these conversations, and so this isn't the last time you'll see us.
No.
I just thought that it was just didn't have a fair go. I mean, we had that for one trade.
I know,
And it was implementing referendum, and it's like, well, how can anybody do that? I mean, you all say that the government shouldn't be there for 3 years because they can't do anything.
Yeah.
Same with council, the same with Māori Ward. It's just like, what a dumb thing to do.
I think to your point, Sandra, like if we were voting on if Mangakino wards were still going to remain, then and we all got to vote at it, then I would go and ask some people in Mangakino how they felt. And so, given we've all been given the opportunity to vote, I would encourage people to go and talk to Māori people and ask them, for their voice on how to vote.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've thought at the same time, as this process has been, I've thought many times through that, but going to Wahine's point, I think ideally, call me naive, I have hope that there's some understanding amongst us as a community to it. Like in another framing, you could see this as a chance to learn, a chance to improve processes like we were talking about before. But then it has become, I've heard some in this commentary talk about, well, is Māori wards even doing anything, or are they effective? If we're going down that line, absolutely agree. Wouldn't you ask Māori? Just Māori, if that was the case? How can you determine if they're effective when their whole point is to be representing Māori? If you're not sort of Māori in there with that. So with you, that has come into my head, that thought. Only when it's been framed like that, and it's just so unfortunate that it has been framed like that, this kind of performance thing. I think it's a red herring. I think it's not really even to do with the fundamentals of what we've been able to get to here about improving systems and processes for fairness and rights and responsibilities. It's about rhetoric there, and that's unfortunate because that's what we're having to deal with right so close up to doing this vote, and that's what we've tried to do with this event, is get into some other frame of thinking, some other framing around this whole issue that allows more questions to pop up about why are we talking about the blunt instrument stuff and who gets to vote on it and things like that.
It's like that's why I keep talking about a mindset shift, or like a mindset thing that needs to happen, because not a mindset shift that needs to happen to make you change your mind, but just the understanding and the context again around these particular kaupapa, because I could stand and run in the general election, sweet as, I could do that, anybody could do that, but the fact is, and the reality is that unless your mindset has that understanding, has that context behind Māori, behind history, behind the founding document of New Zealand, then some people are just not gonna, they're just not gonna, they're not gonna buy, and they never will, it's just, unless they have the context, the understanding behind it. Sure, anybody could run for the Taupō ward, but Māori wards ensure that no matter what happens, you're going to have a Māori voice at the table, you're going to have a Māori voice who has lived that experience at the table. If I wanted to run in the Taupō ward, I could, and I might do so next term if we don't have, big Māori wards. Shit, I might even run for mayor. But honestly, that's the reality is that some people are just gonna
I think to speak to the mind shift, and it's actually about the willingness to listen, the willingness to come here tonight. The willingness to hear a different point of view. That's the mind shift. That's the shift that Wahine's talking about. It's not about necessarily changing our mind. It's like actually just being open to considering another point of view, and digging a bit deeper and unpacking a few things, and not putting this simple kind of wand over it to say it's anti-democratic or something like that. It's actually about going a bit deeper and having that willingness to do that, and the open-mindedness. And I think self-reflection, you know, that is really important to actually consider your own positioning and your own positionality in society, and, you know, acknowledge maybe privilege that you've had or not had, or others around you have had or not had. And that self-reflection is not an easy thing to do. But I think
It's deeply painful.
It can be.
You know, like
yeah.
when I woke up and I went, I've been racist. You know, painful.
Yeah.
You know, and it's up to no one else but me to do the healing in that space,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
You're not responsible for it.
No.
You know, it's me. So it's like I am going to move towards you're either racist or you're anti-racist. You know, like I don't know if there's a middle ground in it. And the first time somebody told me that, I bristled in my seat. I was like, what? You know? Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
But that's where growth happens.
Yeah, totally.
So anyways, does anyone else have any questions?
Or just even like just thoughts, like just not necessarily a question, like how do you
Yeah.
guys all right?
Just comment listening. Thank you, panel, for all your comments. I'm Caroline Clark. I'm just a local here in Taupō, newish local, so I can't say I've been here for forever. Wahine, rau, really fantastic, and even help us if Māori wards are removed. I'd be very sad about that. I'm in favour, just as a something that I believe in and feel that we need here. Do stand. If Māori wards go, do stand.
Okay, no.
Next time, and hey, stand for me. You know, what a great voice you have, and courage, and I think you're encouraging to people, and I think that's what we need.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kia ora, Kela.
If I can make a comment on that as well, there's all the kind of added layers, what we're talking about, context as well. If Māori wards fall, I think people, history says that we will be around. We're gonna. This doesn't shut all the things that are being used as reasons to vote for Māori wards, as if those rights and all those things and that Māori are taking over. We've been here and we're gonna be here and we're gonna do what we do and do our thing. You know, this is what we've done. People may not understand, but something relatively historical for our people of Ngāti Tūwharetoa and people of Aotearoa and people of the world took place over the last week. An institution ages old will be here and will be doing things and will be trying to protect our whenua, trying to protect our water. This Māori wards thing is one part of a system of trying to help that mission, but it's not everything, and don't let that anyone say that was everything and we're shutting it at the gate. It's not. That's not. I'm saying definitely vote for it, please. But
Don't give up on it.
just that's also part of the context that we need to understand. So it's like, okay, if I resign myself to that being the future forevermore, unless something drastic happens, then yeah, I guess we should try and work together on this. So we should try to understand each other on this. We should guarantee that this age-old institution that's been running its oil house without taxpayer money is doing it. We all came, marae across Lake Taupō came together this week through our own tikanga, through our own beliefs, and we've been doing it for years. If that's an engine house that's going, of course, surely the governing body, aka the council that's in that area, should be doing something to connect, to partner, and the mechanism could be questioned, whether it's Māori wards or whatever, but this is, at this time, the best we've got. This is the effort that we have currently that we can build on. We can build from here on that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I think before we have some closing words, I just want on behalf of everyone thank you for your insights and you all come from a different path to how you arrived here at your position, but it's really insightful and you know you come from a place of aroha and a place of togetherness, and you want it to just work for everyone. So I commend you for having the courage for sitting up here and giving us your wisdom.
Well, we also want to extend thanks to our host. He's been great, and I think Ben also adds another layer to the diversity of the types of people that believe in this.
And so if anyone is sitting in the room and is wondering how do I learn more about Te Tiriti, there is a fantastic one-day workshop at REAP. I believe Ingrid Huggins, who is just incredible, will facilitate. I've done the session a day with her before. It's kind of was something that really encouraged me to come forward as tangata tiriti, as becoming tangata tiriti. So, learning